pleasure to introduce eminent personality, Dr. Uday Annapure sir. Sir is currently working as the director at the Institute of Chemical Technology, ICT Mumbai, Marathwada campus, Jalna, Maharashtra, and as the president of Association of Food Scientists and Technologists, India, Mysore. He has 21 years of teaching and research experience. He has been awarded with many awards. I would like to mention few. The Better Opportunity for Young Scientists in Chosen Area of Science and Technology Broadcast Fellowship from Department of Science and Technology, Government of India to visit Washington State University, Pullman, Washington and University of California, Davis, California in 2010. He is a recipient of Technical Education Quality Improvement Program Fellowship of Government of India to visit Rutgers University, the State University of New Jersey, USA in 2007. He is a recipient of Best Teacher Award twice. The award name was Professor D.P. Rege, AFST Mumbai Chapter 2001 Endowment in 2014 and also in 2016. He has been awarded with the Achievement Award by CFP PBN Alumni Association, College of Food Technology, MAU, Parbhani in 2008. Till now, he has received more than 1 crore 53 lakhs as grants for his different research projects. His research interests include cold plasma processing, extrusion processing, traditional food and food biotechnology. Till date, he has guided 18 PhD students and 81 MTech students. He has published over 130 plus research papers in the peer-reviewed journals of national and international repute with total citation of 3,296 with H index 31. He has contributed to 9 book chapters as well. He also has 3 patents to his credit. He is also working as consultant for total 17 reputed food manufacturing companies such as PepsiCo, Kellogg's, Aditya Birla, and so on. I request sir to kindly start the session.
Can I share the is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible. Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you, sir. So, thank you very much for nice introduction and thanks a lot for uh, giving this opportunity to me to be amongst you and to discuss with the eminent faculty members who are the participating in this particular FDP program, and I'm really thankful to organizers for the same. So today I will be just giving you the brief about the nutrigenomics related to present and future in the healthcare. Because definitely it is a very promising area for the research, and maybe in future it will be the major concern for the health of the common people or health of the everyone. And it's some sort of specific uh, attention can be given through the nutrigenomics, or we already know that there is a one term nutraceuticals which has already there, and we can find the various nutraceuticals products presently available in the market. So nutrigenomics is also related to little bit to that, where the supplementation of the diet or the supplementary ingredients or supplementary nutrients can be helpful. Some of the things we need to use, some of the things we need to avoid. So what is to be utilized and what is to be avoided need to be a major concern, and that we need to identify that, and that it is nothing but directly related to the genetic makeup of an individual. Before going to the nutraceuticals or nutrigenomics, what I would like to go through is the nutrition. We will try to understand the nutrition first, as food is our need. Every living individual on this earth, maybe the human being, animal, plant, or small creatures, or including the microorganisms. Everybody needs the food for the survival. Food is the basic need for the survival. Because when we go for our fundamental needs, the first comes the foods. It starts with the food. Because the food is very, very closely associated with our day-to-day life. And what is the food then? Because the food is required. Because consider that human being as an, if you see at the as a machine. So if no machine, I can say the no machine can work without energy. Without energy, all machines will be standstill. So same way, our body is also the machine, and that machine needs the fuel. And from where the fuel is coming, it is coming from the food. There are lot many functions which are going in throughout the body, because I believe most of, means all of you are from the pharmaceutical background, so I don't need to explain the physiology or the metabolism in the body. You are quite aware of all those things. So whatever the metabolic activities are going on in the body, all the activities needs the particular ingredients, and those ingredients are nothing but many of the chemicals or biochemicals. Some of them we call as a nutrients because they carry some nutritive importance for that sake. That is the difference between the just normal any kind of compound or any kind of normal chemical or the biochemical and the nutrient. Nutrient is having some relationship with the or the functionality basically with the different aspects of the life, particularly the growth of the body, maintenance of the body, or whatever the tear and wear going into body, everything is related to these nutrients, and that's what we call them as a nutrients. Nutrition is actually both the science and the social science also, because it also related to the even behavioral sciences also. So it's all depend on in under which environment, under which circumstances we are growing and we are living. So all the nutrients which are the part of our diet will definitely have the different functions with different importance. If you see the nutritions, in the nutrition, what are those nutrients? Particularly, we call it as a nutrient because those are very important elements, vital elements for the growth and maintenance of our body. And we all quite aware of that. These are carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and water is also, because though the water may not be having the nutritive value as such, because we usually say the calorific value or nutritive value, but it's very important from the point of view of all the metabolic activities and metabolism. So these are some of the nutrients which out of these six, all are not providing you the energy. Some of them are providing energy, some of them are not. So generally the energy is being calculated or term in the term of calories, And as far as the food is concerned, it is generally termed as a kilocalories. So carbohydrates, fats, proteins are actually the nutrients which provide us the energy to perform the important functions in the body. Whereas there are other nutrients like vitamin, minerals, and other things. Those are non-calorific kind of nutrients, which they are not providing any kind of calories to us. So definitely we need the energy for all our activities. When our body uses the carbohydrate, fats, and proteins, definitely the energy is released, which is being calculated in terms of the calories. So if we go one by one, the carbohydrates are the very everyone needs them, because carbohydrates are supposed to be the major source of the energy, which which includes the sugars and the starches. Basically, most of the carbohydrates are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. These are the major important uh, constituents of the carbohydrates. And uh, in general, if we can see, the carbohydrates can be divided in simple and complex carbohydrates. Most of the time, the simple carbohydrates are monosaccharides or sometimes disaccharides, which can be easily absorbed, degraded and absorbed in the body. Monosaccharides like glucose, fructose, galactose, and the disaccharides like lactose, sucrose, maltose, which are the very commonly being used. Sucrose is the most commonly used carbohydrate, simple carbohydrate, which is also called as a table sugar, which we use for each and everything. So that is also the disaccharide, which contains glucose and fructose together. Apart from that, complex carbohydrate is another way of looking at in the carbohydrates, which contain the oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. Oligosaccharides are generally 3 to 10 sugar units are together, whereas polysaccharides are more than 10 units, the long chain. So, of course, in complex carbohydrates also, it's not necessary that all the complex carbohydrates will give you the energy. Some of them are uh, giving you the 0 calories also. So some of them will give impart with the calories, some of them will give you the zero. But in case of simple carbohydrates, definitely they are leading to give you the energy and calories, because those are simple sugars and readily get absorbed in the blood streams, and which can be utilized by the body on regular basis. So these are the simple carbohydrates as we discussed right now, and glucose is the major one which is being utilized by the body, which is in a high demand. But here, one thing is there: the glucose, when it's been taken as excess amount, that excess glucose probably may not be thrown out of the body, but rather it is being stored by the body in the form of the glycogen, and that's why it is converted to the glycogen, and from the starch again, like it's stored in the muscles and livers, and it is converted into glucose again whenever body requires that, or if there is a depletion of the glucose level in the body, or storage in the body. So that is the reason why it is being stored. So it is stored in the form of the glycogen. Complex carbohydrates are the one which are actually not being readily available to the body. Those need to be degraded in the body into the simpler form. For example, starches are there's a long chain glucose units. The starches will be broken down into the smaller units like a glucose, and then it's there. Whereas another part is the dietary fiber, again complex carbohydrates, is again divided into two parts, soluble or insoluble. Sometimes there are fibers which are soluble fibers, insoluble fibers. So again, but most of the time fibers do not of any kind of energy. So these are soluble and insoluble fibers which are present in the nature and we are using for food purposes. Then fats again are the one of the major components in the body. Actually, fats are the one of the energy value, and the 1 gram of fat will give you 9 kilocalories. Energy. So fats are insignificant, and that's what when when we consider the nutrition or when we want to go for the weight loss and all those things, most of the time the fats or lipids are the targets because cut down of those fats and lipids is most important. Control over the energy intake. So definitely there are two types of fats, saturated fats and unsaturated fats. So again, saturated, polyunsaturated, that is the, you might be well aware of all those things. And the cholesterol is the major one, most important from the health point of view. Uh, Usually the plant oils do not contain any cholesterol, but the animal food definitely will contain the lot of amount of cholesterol. That is the major way by which the intake of the cholesterol in the body. But you may restrict the entry by avoiding the animal foods and all. And probably the cholesterol is also very important from the point of view of the vitamin D and other hormones because in presence of cholesterol, the utility or the usability of that increases. You might be aware of this that there are two types of cholesterol, LDL and VSDL, bad and low, and good quality cholesterol there. Proteins are again the one of the major nutrients which are most important for the human body, and proteins are basically they are giving us the amino acids. 20 different amino acids are there. Of course, protein again as a um, bunch of the amino acids. It is again the complex matter. It's not the simple. So protein has to be degraded in the body to release the amino acids, and which amino acids can be utilized by the body. So there are some of the amino acids which are called as essential amino acids because those are not being synthesized in the human body, and therefore those have to need to be taken from the outside, and that's what they are very essential one. So 9 such amino acids are there which are very, very essential for the human being. Now coming to the other nutrients, basically vitamins, mineral and water, which are not having any calorific value, but those are, and their requirement is also in a very small quantity, but those are very, very important for human body and for the human being, for the growth and maintenance of the body. So definitely the amount of all these vitamins, minerals are varied with the different kind of food products which we are consuming, and that's what we need to have the include the variety of the foods in our diet so that it can be you can get the exposure or you can get all those kind of nutrients like vitamins and minerals can be supplied through your diet. So there are vitamins are actually, I did not explain you people because you are quite aware of all those things. We have the fat soluble vitamins and water soluble vitamins. Definitely all those vitamins to perform the different functions uh, in our body regularly. And of course, there are limitations for the vitamin intakes also. We have to regulate the vitamin content in our regular, maybe when we are getting the supplementary foods or any prescription from the as a medicine, we are consuming the vitamins because in case of this pandemic situation, we all are quite aware that there's a lot of requirement of the vitamin C because that was the one of the major concern during the this corona, and minerals and vitamins, because most of the time these minerals and vitamins are play a major role in your immunity boosting, also immunity of the body, and vitamin C was one of that, and as well as the some of the minerals like zinc was also being administered during the this pandemic situation to increase the immunity of the human body to fight against the coronaviruses and all. So you are aware of all those things. So these are the some of the water soluble and fat soluble vitamins which are required for us. The mineral matters are there are many of the minerals are there which are actually available in the very trace amount or very small quantity, and but we need all of them, and definitely we are getting our requirement fulfilled by uh, through various diet, various fruits, vegetables, and dry fruits, and many other whatever the food we are consuming as a food. All those are containing different kind of minerals, mineral matters, and all which are very essential for the human body. Many times the metabolic activities which are being going on in the body are regulated, or these minerals plays the major role in all those metabolic activity. Many times they are working as a important intermediates or cofactors with some of the enzymes or some of the other reactions or biochemical reactions which are uh, going on in the body. So some of the major minerals which we are quite aware of that are calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, potassium, sulfur, sodium and chlorine. These are some of the major minerals which we required at a larger quantity on regular basis. That's what those are considered as a major one. Calcium is the most important because that helps in your bone health as well as the nervous system. Sodium and potassium are also one of the most important major minerals which are intracellular as well as the extracellular, and which are very important to regulate your blood pressure and other things. So definitely deficiency of this such kind of minerals will definitely lead to some of the disorders. Even the you might be aware, very well aware, that potassium can lead to muscle weakness, and even abnormal heartbeats can also be observed uh, if the deficiency of potassium is there. So then uh, there are some of the trace minerals which we call, because those are required at very small quantity. Sometimes it may be the ppm or even the milligrams or ppm level they are there. So we need the requirement is very small. That's what they are considered as the trace minerals. But definitely they are also important, though the quantity is less, but they are important for the body, and they, because in absence of that uh, probably we may lead to the some of the disorder or metabolic disorders or some biochemical reactions which are which might be suffered due to the absence of such kind of trace minerals. But we should not worry much about all those things, because we are actually getting all kind of these mineral matters through the diet which we consume regularly. The nature, Mother Nature, have given us many of the such kind of things uh, around us, and we really need to value all those things. And you need not have to have a special kind of requirements when you are having a regular diet which is available around you. Basically, many times the question arises is that what is your food, what should be your diet, what should be your food. So many people do ask me. So my answer to that is usually your food is the food which is around maybe in the periphery of, say, 5 to 10 kilometers, or we can expand it to 20 kilometers or whatever it is. But it is all depend on where you have born. what is your native? So when you are born, means nowadays I can't really stick to that my point also, because uh, movements of the human people are so fast that many times people have to shift from one place to other place, from the maybe the for the education, maybe for the job, or for many other things. People keep shifting from one place to other place. But ultimately, when your parents shift from one place to other place, definitely you are going to born at some different place, which is not anyway close to your mm, parents or grandparents' native place. But in olden days, actually, it has been seen that the families, the generations of the families are actually uh, staying in a particular location. They don't move far away from that particular location. So in that periphery, in such scenario, considering that scenario, I will uh, suggest that whatever your native place is there, in such cases where your generations are staying together at the same place or the in particular periphery, whatever the food material available surrounding to that is actually your food. If it is coming from outside, then it is actually imported food. So your genetic makeup actually is not is very well conversant with whatever the available food is there, and that's what the we are getting the food materials which are around us is more than enough. We really don't need the food which is imported one. That again I will come to later this point. So uh, coming to next is the water, which is also very important for the body, though it is not giving you any calories and all, but it's the most important fluid which is present in the tissues and your body, and which is very, very important, because lack of water will definitely lead to dehydration, and there are many further consequences of the dehydration. So most of the time, the water is actually very important to maintain the electrolytes in the body. That balance of the electrolyte is most important in the body. And many of the in weight loss programs, usually it happens that initially you find the immediate loss of weight, but actually it is not the loss of weight, because it is actually the loss of water from your body, which we reflect or we consider as a weight loss. It's not the direct weight loss. It's not the loss of weight from your muscular tissues and all. It's a loss of water. But slowly, then after that, whatever is reduced is your weight loss. But because there is certain limit up to what water can be get reduced the body. So definitely all these deficiencies of all such kind of nutrients, whatever major or minor nutrients which we have seen, are definitely leading to the some of the disorders or the diseases. Now, why we are deficient in the all these cases are all these nutrients is basically we can say the then poor diet or poor nutrition which we are getting is the responsible for that. Nowadays, see many times we can observe that there is a deficiency of vitamin D is very common nowadays. The reason is very simple, that we are not exposing ourselves to the sunlight. That is the major concern. Otherwise, when during my childhood, I had never uh, heard that there is a deficiency of the vitamin D. In most of the cases, anemia and all, we know that deficiency of hemoglobin or amount of the hemoglobin is less in the blood, and all those things are we were heard on regular basis. But vitamin D and all, we hadn't really uh, heard any time. But nowadays it is very common. If you go to the any practitioner doctor and with the complaint of your uh, joints and all, so it's all leading to the vitamin D deficiency, and that is nothing but because of the limited exposure to the sunlight, or rather no exposure to the sunlight. That is the major concern. So we have all the nutrients around us, but only thing is that how we utilize best way is the most important. When we are failing to utilize them in a best way, that is the problem. So, and therefore we need to supplement them to overcome whatever the deficiencies are there. So mainly if you see the causes of the nutrition deficiencies, the main causes of the nutrition deficiency include the poor diet that lacks in essential nutrients, a disease that impairs absorption, or the both. Basically, there are two things. Maybe you have the nutrients abundant, the store of the nutrient is available to you or your body, but probably sometimes uh, their absorption also be a problem. So both the factors are important, availability of the essential nutrients as well as their proper absorption in the body is also important. Secondly, the pregnancy can also cause the nutrient deficiencies, for example, iron deficiency, which is very prominent in the ladies. Bariatric surgery, which actually reduces the size of the stomach to achieve the weight loss, but which may also lead to the nutritional deficiency because the capacity of the stomach has been reduced. So definitely the intake will be reduced, and along with that the nutritional will also be reduced, the intake of the nutrition, because it's all come in the particular set of diet or the food. So nutrient deficiencies are commonly seen in the preschool children, pregnant women, vegans, and other adults, because this is also nowadays vegan is a big fad. It's nothing wrong into that, but it's okay. But at the same time, I would suggest you should look at your requirement, body requirements also. It's not that thing, whatever the things are they are given by the mother nature. Uh, it's everything has its own importance, and actually you are dependent on all those things, and they all required for you. So if you try to avoid some of the things, probably it will lead to some of the deficiencies, disorders, or the diseases. So here there are lot many diseases are there related to the particular nutrients, particularly the carbohydrate deficiency and whatever the disorders are there. I think I will not go into details of that because you are very well aware of all those things. Carbohydrate deficiency, then protein deficiency, which is very major in most of the children, where and which actually affects their growth, and that is the why they are further they will face further diseases and disorder, because proteins are also very important for the muscular strength as well. Fat deficiencies, of course, fats do, though we consider fats are not good for the health, and we usually try to avoid the fat, but we should not do that also. At the limited amount of the fat are very important for the body. So you have to decide the limits for that. See, in nature, uh, everything has a certain upper capping, and that everything has certain limits. So everything you do, that everything should have certain limits. If you cross those limits, then everything is bad. Wherever you cross the limit, it is bad. So anything in a small amount or the limited amount or the required amount is always good. But if you excess that particular limit, if you cross that particular limit, definitely it's a bad, and then it will have its adverse effect. So now you all are pharmacists. I assume that you will agree with me that even the poison is also the medicine at other end. Correct? But that also depends on the quantity. Probably some of the poisons at a very small quantity may work as a medicine, but when it excess, it becomes toxic. Same thing with the drug. There may be some many of the life-saving drugs are there, but at particular quantity they will work as a medicine. But excess of that quantity or you exceed the quantity, definitely it will show its effects, which you may call the side effects or the excess of or maybe the what we call as a toxic effects to the body. So everything has a certain limit. So we should not cross that limit. So even in this case, fats are also very, very important for the human body. And those are important because those helps in your vitamin absorption or even the wound healing, hormone production. It's a great source of energy. So all these things are there, but you need to have to decide certain limits on that, and you need to avoid the excess of that. So everything in a proper limit is always good. So we should not worry about that. So apart from that, the micronutrients which are there, those are also having, those are actually leading to the various diseases. Rather than carbohydrate, fat, protein, which can be make up from any kind of other sources, but deficiencies related to the micronutrients are very, very important because those are very particular to with concern to the particular nutrient. So iron deficiency is particularly very particular for the human body basically because that iron is a part of our blood, and definitely anemia is the one disease, one disorder I can say is because of the um, uh, iron deficiency. So there are many more such kind of deficiencies are the iodine deficiency, goiter and all, which we know. That's what we actually we are consuming the iodized salt to overcome those particular deficiencies. Vitamin D deficiencies, uh, of course, related to the bone and all. Vitamin then apart from that, there are water soluble vitamins like vitamin B12 uh, is also responsible for many of the disorders. Calcium deficiency is one of the major, which is also important from the bone health point of view. Uh, Vitamin A deficiency is again very uh, prominent if you want to overcome the eyesights and to uh, basically vitamin A are related to the eyesight, and retinol is one of the major uh, chemical which is uh, important from the vitamin A point of view. But apart from that, vitamin A precursor, which is known as a beta carotene, is also the good source of vitamin A. It's not a vitamin A actually, but it is a precursor of vitamin A, and which is abundantly available in the plant foods. So magnesium is also the important because it also have some deficiency diseases, and thiamine, niacin, all these folate. Folate is also the very, very lately it has been observed that it is very, very important from the during the pregnancy, and uh, now it is being administered as a supplement to the during the pregnancy. And of course, the poor folate metabolism can lead to the spina bifida, depression, anxiety, Alzheimer. But there are many things are there if you just go, because it's not so simple. It's always a complex matrix. It's not just the folate metabolism will lead to certain deficiency, but it may be the initiation, but other things may be get added in the due course of time. So to avoid all those things, all the these diseases related to deficiency diseases, particularly I can say related to nutrients and all, the healthy eating is most important, and that healthy eating should encompass all the different types of food materials together, so that everything will play its role for the development, growth, and sustenance of your body. So actually, there are suggested pyramids are there, and that pyramid actually suggests what component should be consumed at what quantity. So as if you see at the top of the pyramid, usually the uh, fats and some sweets, salt, or the meat and all are being included. It indicates that the quantity of these kind of food materials in our diet should be at very less, whereas you need the more vegetables, more cellulosic foods, cellulose containing foods as a uh, good diet or the balanced diet. So the major question here is, does the diet cause disease? Because is it related directly, any kind of disease is directly related to diet? Of course, it's not so simple. There are many ways. If you can look into that, the diet, uh, heavy diet may lead to the increase in your weight, increase in your body size. So what is your body size? Body mass index, which we call it in common, is that also is important when you trying to correlate from the diet to the disease. Body size, body mass index, what are the physical activities you are involved in, how long you are involved in the physical activities per day, whether your life is sedentary life or active life, all those things are also important. Further to that, whatever the food material which you are consuming is what is the quality of that food material, what is the nutrient density of that food material, whether that particular diet is balanced or not. And apart from that, what are the cooking methods you are using to prepare the food, that also matters a lot, because many of the time most of the time the cooking is being done by using the thermal processing. We are almost using the heat processing. We are heating the food material for the cooking purpose. But when we heat the food material, what should be the temperature which need to control? Because if you are using the higher temperature, probably the heat labile constituents or the heat sensitive nutrients may lose during the processing, and then you may not get those kind of nutrients in the cooked food, probably after excessive heating. And also all these things have to be have the effect on all those things. These are very minor things, but we have to link together each one thing. These are all the different dots. When you try to connect this dot, you will come to know what is affecting what and how it can be avoided. Over and above that, is there any metabolic disorders? Is there any metabolic differences? Maybe the metabolism may get affected or affected by the way of either having the excess of nutrients or the having the limited amount of nutrients also. In both the way it is affected. Higher side is also not good and lower side is also not good. So somewhere we have to try to correlate with, when we are trying to correlate the diet and disease, then all these dots are there which you need to connect and see what is the effect on each other. It's a multiple complex system in rather that way, I can say it's not straightforward and so easy. So apart from that, genetic factors are also important, which may lead to the metabolic differences or any other kind of diseases. So these diseases usually, if we see the, it's a monogenic and complex diseases. The monogenic are the conditions caused by the mutation in the single gene, particularly whatever the genetic makeup is there. The example has been given here as a sickle cell anemia, sickle cell disease, which is a and cystic fibrosis, which leads to some kind of genetic defects or the mutation in a single gene. Whereas the complex disease is the condition caused by the many contributing factors. Uh, it's not a single gene, it may be the various genes or in the pool of the gene, probably the defective genes or the mutations or any kind of missing links in the genes may also be possible. And that may lead to the coronary heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and all. Many times this is again related to the your hereditary factors. Hereditary factor is nothing but that whatever the gene pool you are carrying from your parents is matter a lot here. So in case of complex disease, someone, for example, if you go for the cardiovascular disease only alone, it's not, it's the genetic makeup which is responsible for that. That is also the one thing. But apart from that, your lifestyle matters a lot. Whether you are working under stress, what is your physical activity, whether you are having the appropriate amount of the physical activities, what are your habits, smoking, drinking, surrounding area, that is pollution, whether you are exposed to the unnecessary usage of the trans fatty acids and all. So which may lead to the probably whether you are obese or not, whether you are, what is the cholesterol level in your body, whether you are diabetic or not. So all these are, it's altogether complex. I think you are well aware of all these facts, how complex it is. And so this complexity is not only related to the your nutrient intake, but it also leads to the genetic factors. Then maybe the hypertension, diabetes, which are the very risk factors, environmental exposure, risk factors. Then what are the miserable threats out of that? Atherosclerosis and other things where, which may be the, and apart from that, what are the phenotypes in that case, whether it is a myocardial infarction or ischemic stroke, and many peripheral vascular diseases and all those things are there. So considering all those things, one conclusion we need to make here is that many levels of interactions are actually there, and which makes very challenging to know which interaction is resulted in a particular phenotype. So it's an ultimately the complex thing, definitely, but we want to sort out those complexes by considering the uh, genetic makeup or genetic studies. That is what we are now trying to approach that. So is it the case that for all the individuals one diet fit to all? No, that is not possible, because every individual is different. Every individual is different. Means many times I used to say that in case of allopathic medicines, usually we consider all the human beings are at the are suffering, are maybe the in a similar category, I can say, not an separate, as not separate individual, but the we have learned from the science and the experiences that yes, the particular drug is definitely acting for the particular disease or disorder. So that particular drug will definitely use against that particular disorder, but it is being used very commonly. But it's not the case actually. The everybody's need is different. So definitely doctors or practitioners do consider those things also, and depending upon that, the dosage levels are varied. Sometimes medicines are also varying. Many times if you uh, ask the any doctor practitioners uh, how they are doing. Basically, they have their own way to ask each one how they are doing. So usually, when two doctors meet each other, they will ask each other how your practice is going on. So here the major understanding what I understood is that no doctor is perfect throughout his life. He is always practicing because they ask each other how the practice is going on. So it means that all those are practitioners. They are also called as the practitioners. So they practice. Why they practice? Because there is not a known set of things is available in nature, because every individual is different. Genetic makeup of every individual is different. Requirement of that every individual is different. So, of course, all these practitioners have to decide what should be the dosage form, what should be the medicine to be given. Many times we see that the same medicine given to the two different individuals, so one individual will respond very well, one individual will not respond very well, because that is not his requirement, his or her requirement. So probably he needs a different kind of medicine. So doctor, next time that patient when goes to the doctor, doctor asks him how you are feeling now. So patient will obviously say, no sir, there is no much difference, but still I am not that better, but still. So then what doctor is going to do? He will change the medicine and he will give some other kind of medicine. So that is the practicing which medical practitioners do. So obviously it is the same way. Diet is also not same for all, because again nature have taken care for all those things also. Many times the likeness of the food material, liking of the food is different for different individual. That is the reason basically here that likingness has to be developed. It's not just an overnight process. The likingness of every food is actually developing from since your birth, and during your childhood you have a lot of experiences you have undergone. Particularly, see, from the point of view of the sensory knowledge or the psychological knowledge of any individual, everyone have a different kind of taste. Every individual is different in that manner. Whatever probably I like, the somebody else won't like that. Probably whoever somebody else is liking something which probably I may not like that. That is the difference is always there. And why that difference is actually it is leads to your exposure to that particular product or particular commodities or particular environment. Even in case of the uh, food commodities are there, and where the likingness is a concern, if you see that the child or at the when you are at the adolescence age, that is the age where you can take the challenges very easily, and in that case those particular group of that age group, everything can be tested, everything is acceptable. But once you move ahead from that, probably at the older age, you have restrictions for those all those things. No, no, I will not eat that. I will eat this much. I will eat that much. So all those restrictions you set on your own, because it all being set by your body also. Because your body knows exactly what you require and what you don't require. So definitely the one diet will not fit to all. It all depends on the different factors like the body size, the physical activity which you are doing, the genetic factors which are most important for liking and disliking of the food. Also, metabolic differences are there. many people who are suffering with the acidity and others in disorders probably have the limitations to eat the certain kind of foods also. So you on your own set all those limitations. So all these, but behind that, all these factors are important that probably we might not be aware of those things. So coming to that is a foodomics is the one a new term which is coming nowadays is a the comprehensive high throughput approach for the exploitation of food science in the light of an improvement in the human nutrition, because it's an food and genomics together called a foodomics. The foodomics is actually the new approach where the food and nutrition can be studied, and the food domain as well as a whole with the nutrition domain in each of the main objective, the optimization of the human health and well-being. Ultimately, it is what we are working for, the human health and well-being. So basically, food is a medicine. It has been said by the uh, many scientists that how the food can be effectively used as a medicine. Food is actually a connection between the surrounding and you particularly, and actually it gives you the information also, means what kind of uh, uh, food material or the nutrients or the particular constituents which will give you some necessary information from your body also. So food sends the information signals to the particular genes. So depending on that, of course, it's an biochemical reactions which happens within the body, and where the uh, there are certain receptors, there are certain chemicals, and they know each other, they recognize each other, and they get together. So likewise, there is a continuous game actually going on, the reception, transduction, transfer of knowledge, transfer of transcription, and many of the things are which are involved into all those things. So now, before going to the nutrogenomics, we can see look at the genomics. Actually, what is the genomics? Is the study of the entire genome in the body, and the human genome is a big project which has been undertaken long ago to reveal all the genetic coding for the human being. It has been started in 1990s, and almost 2003 all the gene mapping has been completed, and the whole genome is now available for the research for difference to the scientists. So we are actually defined by the genotypes, the nutrients, and the phenotypes which are responsible for all such kind of disorders. So genomics, epigenetics is another term where the control of environment on the gene expression is most important, and nutritional genomics which influence the nutrients on the gene expression, and pharmacogenomics is again the in a similar manner of the pharmacogenomics where the influence of the drugs on the gene expression is being studied. Likewise, the influence of the nutrients can also be studied on the gene expression, and which is the nutritional genomics or the nutrigenomics. So nutritional genomics, if you see by definition, the utility of the nutrients to serve as a dietary signals of that to modify the gene expression, proteins, and metabolic functions. So here the genome is the story of the most astonishing scientific adventure of our time. Actually, the attempt to map all the genes in the human body, so that once you map all the genes, so you know which gene is where and what is its function and all. So you can correlate between the availability of the genes and their functionality, and of course you can predict many things out of that. Maybe the certain diseases, maybe in the future which disease you will lead to may also be predicted with this genomic studies. So it's an basically it works on the signaling, where the transcription induced by the extracellular triggers like hormones, vitamins, and nutrients, which may trigger the transcription, and this transcription with DNA, RNA, all those will be involved into that, and the protein, and ultimately it's metabolites, where the it is going to lead the disease mechanism or the diseases which are related to those things. It may be related to the oxidative stress, may be related to metabolic stress or metabolic disorders, inflammation, neurological stress. Lot many things are involved into that. Many details are yet to come, but your genes are not actually your destiny, because lot of whatever the gene map is there for an individual, there are lot many gaps are there, lot many missing links are there. So people are trying to, scientists are trying to identify all those missing links and why those links are missing, and accordingly they are going to come forward with their results, that to how, what are the importance of all those things. Although the genes are crucial for determining the functions, nutrition modifies the extent to which the different genes are expressed, and thereby modulates whether the individual attain the potential established by their genetic background, or in other words, what we need to understand is, whatever the genetic mapping is there, what is the potential of that genes to identify your future disorders in the uh, life cycle. So when we really do that, if you really go for the mapping of the individual, or all the genetic map and whatever the genetics involved into that, probably it will be like an personal health care. It is towards the personal health care, I can say, because in earlier days we were having the family doctors. So all these family doctors are aware of the medical history of all your family members, and they were actually trying to correlate even your father or grandfather, their whatever the disorders or the diseases or whatever the medicine has been given to them. Accordingly, it's kind of mapping system. Without knowing the genetics, that was mapping was already being done without knowing the genetics. But when you really reveal the all genetic map, probably you can understand it in a better manner. And that's what it will be very helpful in the personalized nutrition, or even the treatment also in that case. After knowing the whole gene map, probably you can really identify the causes of the disease, and you can really treat them, you can suggest the medicine, you can try to avoid also. Likewise, in nutrigenomics, whatever the nutrient deficiencies are there, and which can be lead to the what kind of disease, that can also be considered while mapping the gene or the genetic map which we are having. So it's more over the personalized nutrition, which will come up in the future, so that it will consider all your genetic map along with your lifestyle, along with your dietary habits, physical activities, gut microbiota, because everything is then correlated to the your genetic makeup. So nutrigenomics is actually, if you see that, looking at the two different things, genes and food or the nutrient together. So there are also again the two different ways looking at that, nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics. So nutrigenomic is a prospective science that is the effect of the diet on the gene expression. Whereas in the nutrigenetics, it is a retrospective science, the effect of individuals' genetic variations to the diet. So, of course, every individual will be different. So, there may be the various genetic variations you can observe when you really look at the genetic map. So, nutrigenomics integrates the genomics and nutrition together, and the goal of this is to improve the health and preventing the disease through the tailored diet or the lifestyle prescriptions. So, how is it possible if you can alter the diet or you can tailor the diet? Because once you know the genetic map, probably tailoring will be very easy. So, the influence of the food on the genetic expression includes the how and what you eat turns on or off your genes. It also refers to the interaction between the genes and the nutrients. Modification that can occur directly or indirectly because of the presence and absence of the particular nutrient, or other way, presence or absence of particular gene factor also. The chronic disease onset, incidences, progression, and or severity, which may influence the diet regulated genes and their common variants. All these are the different factors which we need to consider. So when you see the nitrogenomics, how close you are to this nitrogenomics is that whatever the things you have are it is your genes, and at the other end you have the food, and you need to see what is the effect of your food on the genes or genetic makeup. And that is what, when all together we need to look at the genomics, we are looking through the diet for the good health. So these are some of the examples of the nutrigenomics. We can just go through that. Food material which we are consuming will definitely have the different nutrients and very important nutrients which may lead to direct expression to the genes. And it's as of today, we need to see that food is more than calories, because keeping calories apart, you have to have control over the calories, but you cannot have the control over the food. You need the food material for your body. Only thing that we need to avoid the bad foods, so that which can give you the disease unless you have the genes to intervene and protect you. So, of course, various it has to go through various clinical trials and all. The nutrigenetics, in that sense, it's a genetic makeup of a person which has the that lead, which leads them to require certain nutrients of the higher or lower levels. You need to decide the level of the particular nutrient, and both of which may be implicated in their uh, prosperity towards the, what is the probability of those low level or high level of the nutrient towards the disease, which basically imparts with the single nucleotide polymorphism, that is SNP, and this is the very important field to study as far as the personalized nutrition is concerned. So epigenetics is again a different phenomena where the chances for the heritable changes that do not impact the gene sequences and modification of the gene sites or the histone proteins can be done by the way of the methylation, phosphorylation, acetylation. And these are the different ways the people who are working in the area of the biotechnology and all genetic engineering are quite aware. So definitely the nutrients do play the major role in the epigenetics also. All these are the different nutrients which we have already seen are this is a broad differentiation between the nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics. So I think we had a little bit talk on that. The nutrigenomics usually refers to the application of genomics in the nutrition research, enabling association to be made between specific nutrients and genetic factors. That is the way in which food or the food ingredients influences the gene expression. So ultimately, the nutrigenomics should facilitate the greater understanding of how nutrients affect metabolic pathways and how this process goes away in the diet-related diseases. And whereas, on the other hand, the nutrigenetics is a study of individual differences at the genetic level influencing the response to the diet. These individuals differences may be at the level of single nucleotide polymorphism rather than at the gene level. So it is envisaged that the nutrigenetics may lead to individualized dietary advice, and which is actually the toward the personal nutrition, we can say. There are lot many such differences are there. It's an I will not. So, in short, the nutrigenomics focuses on the effect of nutrients on the genome, proteome, and the metabolome, whereas nutrigenetics examines the effect of genetic variation on the interaction between the diet and the exercise. This includes the gene variation associated with or responsible for the differential responses to the nutrients. So this is what is the general difference between, but if you see that nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics are actually the two sides of a coin where both the things are go hand in hand. This is how the food compounds are actually interacting with the DNA, RNA, the protein receptors in the body and metabolites. So obviously, why we are looking at all these things are to improve the health of the population. It has been started. All these studies have been started in the United States, but now globally, scientists are working in this particular direction. It may improve the athletic performance. It may have a better control over the weight so that you can achieve the weight loss also. And definitely it will have the potential economic impact all over the world because the functional food and dietary supplement is currently a $40 billion industry. And further to that, it is expected that in next 7 to 10 years, it may be the $80 billion industry. So definitely it has a lot of scope in future. So if we see that whatever the studies have been done till time, the research has been done till time, there are many evidences to correlate the genetic makeup with the nutrients also. So single gene disorders in case of PKU or the lactose intolerance is the one which both these are the majorly studied or research has been done in a long way. Then there are complex conditions where the genes involved in the susceptibility to complex diseases which have been already identified. Nutritional environment modifies the expression of the genes and the metabolism of the nutrient may vary by genotype, ultimately with the which affect the health of the individual. So these are some of the examples where the till time various researchers have identified some of the different kind of genes. Particularly, for example, heart health, it analyzes the 13 of your genes that may play the important role in the determining how your body manages overall heart health, and assess the 9 key diets and the lifestyle actions in that area can be correlated. Bone health, again, there are 4 genes which have been identified which are related to the bone health, which are determining the overall management of your bones in the body. Likewise, there are 5 genes which have been identified for the insulin resistance. There are 6 genes which have been identified for the genetic assessment for antioxidant or detoxification also. These are the pieces collected from the various research articles. Inflammation health particularly, there are 6 such kind of genes are also identified for which are related to the inflammation activities in the body. So definitely it has a various potential, these nutrigenomics will have the good potential, and there are lot many benefits to improve on the lifestyle and along with the healthy diet for the human being. It motivates the positive behavior of the change. It increases the awareness because if you know your genetic map and if you know the things in advance, probably you will be more aware with the risks which are there in your future, and those can be easily taken care if you know it in advance. Improve health and quality life, then focus will be more on prevention rather than the treatment or the cure, because always we used to say that care is better than cure. So this is kind of the care which you have to take by the way of understanding your own genetic map and your own intake of the different nutrients along with means based on the lifestyle or the day-to-day routines. It may lead to decrease in the morbidity and the premature mortality. It may reduce the healthcare cost also, because as everything is known already, so you may plan for those things. Identify subgroups who might be particularly responsive or resistant to the environmental or the particularly dietary interventions which we need to do if you know it in a bit in advance, and better understanding of the mechanism involved in the disease susceptibility is also the benefit of all those things. But apart from that, again, there are some challenges or some other sides also, which I can say it is a harm, because again, every coin has 2 sides. Some of the things are positive, but at the same time, some of the things may be negative. Every effect has a side effect also. Likewise, along with these benefits, there are potential risks also involved into that. So where the attention is drawn away from other modifiable risk factors, you will be more concerned about this when you know that, and that is a human tendency. When you know something in a depth, then you take more concern of that and you are more worried about that. So probably it will lead to decrease the use of other services, maybe the medical services which are being used in emergency cases right now. But if you know the things in advance, probably that emergency may not be there because you are aware of that. Other way is the false sense of security is also the one thing which may happen, because when you know the things, probably you are also knowing that you are taking good care of that, probably which may be correct or not, but it may give you the false sense of security, that is very much sure, because you feel that you are secure because of knowing these things. But if you are not going to treat them, if you are not going to take care for them, it may be the false sense of security. So it may not be actually, you are not secured, but you are getting that sense of security. Focus on specific nutrients and foods will be concentrated, and then probably while concentrating that, you may avoid some other things also which are supposed to be essential, but probably you will not focus on that also. So that maybe it will create some sort of imbalance, I can say, and that is not advisable. Uh, Maybe sometimes it may be the ineffective also, whatever being information which you have gathered, uh, and probably the treatment is not going into the proper direction, or there are some times that even you know the all the genetic map is along with you, it is in front of you, but probably if you miss anything to pinpointing the thing, probably it may not have that effect what you are expecting. And that's what it is also considered as a false sense of security. Misleading claims, because then many of the industries which are coming into this business, probably there are chances for some misleading claims coming out, because that is a regular practice. We also observe this as of today. Also, we can see that such kind of misleading claims are always there, and which may not be true in fact, but that is also the again the harm in all these things. Dilute or the contradict the public health messages that usually being done, because people used to play with the psychology of the people, and based on that this can also be taken the other way round. Increased cost associated with the personalized diets and designer foods, because as the industry which will be involved in uh, developing or manufacturing such kind of designer foods or the personalized diet, definitely as it is a personalized diet, that is a designer food, probably its cost will be more. So maybe common man may not be affordable, may not be probably may not afford it, but obviously as it is an restricted to the some personalized database, so personalized diet is being designed, so definitely it will have the consumer have to pay the more cost for that. Targeting vulnerable population is a great risk, because it's an again the scaring the people, the group of population, and those are vulnerable, and if you are targeting them to make your business out of that is a major concerns. Again, the concerns surrounding to the confidentiality, insurance, all these are then biobanking of the samples, information, informed consent, and all those legal implications are there, regulatory implications are also there. And there may be chances for the unintended consequences also will happen in due course of time, because ultimately how people are handling the situation, and because human being is very opportunistic, and the opportunity which comes, probably it can be go other way also, even not from the human health point of view, but the industries or the business houses may take the disadvantage of that also. So these are the things, obviously it is going to happen, but of course I believe there will be the regulations, and it has been regulated properly by the government agencies, probably it, some of the things can be avoided out of that. So definitely food has the different effects on the different people, and here there are, I'm just going to show you the different research articles where the people have studied the many things, where the dietary carbohydrate modification and all those things. This is related to the cholesterol. This is also plant-based diet, how it is related to the so all these scientists are working all over the world. This particular matter throughout all the literature which we can observe. So overall, if you see the nutrigenomics will definitely have the great potential for the market, and probably in at the end of the 2021, it has been expected to lead up to 1,033, 1,334 or $35 million till 2021. So of course, it has a big potential for the market. This industry can grow with a great potential. So for this nutrigenomics, we need to use the different tools that microarray and all those things are there. We are quite aware of that. Some of the systemic diseases modified by the diet are the type 2 diabetes, and then obesity, cardiovascular, osteoporosis. These are some of the list of the diseases which have been controlled by uh, changing the diet or the lifestyle, and this is one example for all the things. And ultimately, what we need to do is that we have to balance the food nutrition along with the genetics or the genomics. So for that, we can have the two strategies. One is the traditional hypothesis driven approach, like specific genes and proteins and the expression of which is influenced by the nutrients are identified using genomic tools such as transcriptomics, proteomics, metabolomics, which sequentially allows the regulatory pathways through which diet influences the homeostasis to be identified, and the transgenic mouse models or the cellular models can be used. Those tools can be used here. So which provides us the detailed molecular data on the interaction between the nutrition and the genome. Whereas the other strategy which you can use, that by using the system biology approach, where the gene, protein and metabolites signatures that are associated with the specific nutrients and the nutritional regimes are categorized in the different are categorized cataloged, and might provide the early warning to the individual based on these molecular biomarkers for nutrition induced changes which can be observed during the system. So more important for human nutrition, it's given the difficulty of the collecting tissue samples from the healthy individual. That is the major concern if you want to go through the system biology approach. So these are the two strategies which we can use to study in detail of all those things. So now coming to the conclusion of this talk, I can say that nutrigenomic researchers must know the challenges of the understanding the polygenic diet related diseases, because there are lot many complexities involved in these cases. So at the one hand, you have the genome. Definitely the every individual will have the different genetic makeup, but the constituents of that genetic makeup are more or similar, only the sequences are getting changed. At the other hand, you have the nutrients also, which are also known nutrients, particular nutrients, just you need to carry. There are a lot of the probability levels which you need to study in all these cases. So if you look at that, the whatever the immediate short-term goals, we should have that to identify the dietary signals, to elucidate the dietary sensor mechanisms, to characterize the target genes of those particular sensors, to understand the interaction between these signaling pathways and pro-inflammatory signaling, to search for sensitizing the genotypes, and to find the signatures, the gene or the protein expression and the metabolic profile of the individual to look into all those. So with this, I must thank all of you for patient listening. I don't know how far it is being, whether it is up to your expectation or not, but this is all I have to give you or to discuss with you.
Okay.
So,
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable talk. The session is now open for the discussion. I request all the participants to unmute your mic and ask questions directly, or you can place your questions in chat box, if any. Okay. I would like to ask sir one more question regarding the legal issues.
yes,
Is any ethical or legal that is points regarding this nutrigenomics?
as of today, see, nutrigenomics is not in practice as of today. It's still research is undergoing various aspects. So, as such, see, nutraceuticals are in the market, I think, since more than 2 decades. But
Yes.
still, uh, nutraceutical is quite a gray area as far as the regulation is concerned. Right now, Food Safety Standard Authority of India is looking into that, and now they are in the business of regulating those nutraceutical businesses also. And because I am myself is one of the committee member for this nutraceuticals, functional foods, and all. So at this moment, we are looking at, so actually government regulatory bodies have not given a thought of any retrogenomics or some kind of product as of today. But when it comes, definitely government have to look into that with the regulatory aspect, because there are various pros and cons are there. And as I mentioned, it's at two sides. It is a coin of the two sides, and definitely the other side is have lot of dangers also. So definitely it has to be regulated. But as of today, I don't think that it is being regulated even in the at world at the international level also. But people are definitely thinking over that, and it will going to come. I'm sure of it.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, sir, for giving your that is valuable time. Now, I would like to request Ms. Pradnya Wadekar, ma'am, to sum up the session.
Thank you, sir. Sir has very nicely explained everything in a simple language. He has focused on food initially. The food depends upon the native place that you belong to, and that should be your food. And each and everything is important in the food. Even though we consider that fat is not good, but it is actually important for body's normal functioning. And when it is consumed in moderate level, then only it is good. So we have to be cautious while using each and everything, that it should not cross the limit, and it is in the moderate quantity so that it will benefit us. He also mentioned we should give special attention to the food to make it inclusive of all the nutrients, and special attention should be paid for the conditions like pregnancy, childhood, bariatric surgery, etc. He also mentioned the processing of the food is very important. We should pay attention to it as well, as it is going to hamper the quality and the quantity of nutrient the food contains. The diet as a whole, we should look it on the basis of different factors like body size, physical activity, genetic makeup, metabolic difference, etc. should be considered when we speak about diet. He explained very nicely difference between the nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics. Nutrigenomics can be used to improve health, to have positive behavior, to increase or enhance the athletic performance, to focus on the weight loss, to decrease the morbidity, then to decrease the premature mortality. Such kind of the things can be done with the help of nutrigenetics, sorry, genomics. And the overall focus of nutrigenomics is on the prevention rather than cure and treatment. Like sir mentioned, everything has two sides. Nutrigenomics also has harmful sides, and he explained very well. I would like to sum up some of those, like it gives the sense of security, and sometimes the claims might be misleading. And most important thing is the economy. Means common man cannot, means might not be able to afford it. So he has explained each and everything very nicely. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, now I request all the participants to turn on your camera so that we can have a photo with our eminent speaker. Thank you. Okay, thank you once again, sir, for your valuable time. Okay, spare your very valuable times.
I'm also thankful to organizers for giving this opportunity to interact with all of you.
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. All the participants, we will come back at exactly 3. Okay, thanks for connecting.